Hi everybody, this is Mike Heimburger. Today I am wanting to take you on a detailed walkthrough of the most recent orchestral mockup that I did, my orchestral cover of the Overture to the movie Stargate, composed by David Arnold. I want to do this one, first because it's my most recent thing that I did, but mainly because there's a lot of interesting things that are happening there production-wise. And I want to take you through how the steps that I go through to create something like this. So, all right, let's dig into it here. I've got Logic open. Before I started this, I made sure to grab the original audio. So this top track here, audio 1, is the track. It's the original recording from the movie soundtrack. I put that into an audio track, and the very first thing that I did was match the tempo. If you're doing a mock-up, you don't have to do that, but I really wanted it to as closely to the original match up. So, excuse me, I've got a bit of a sore throat here. I've had a cold, and then I'm in Reno, and all of the smoke from the California fires has been the last couple of weeks coming straight over Reno, and it's messing with my allergies for sure and my recovery from this cold. So prayers for everyone in California that's going through that fire. There's several fires in California. The one that the smoke is coming from is kind of between here and Sacramento somewhere. So anyways, Logic has a function that will automatically map out a tempo for you if you're bringing in an audio file. I tried that, and it really did not work. And part of the reason I think it didn't work is this is an orchestral track. It starts out very soft. It's like starts out, you can barely hear it, and it slowly crescendos and crescendos. And then there's not a very clear beat. Like this isn't a song with a drummer playing a drum set where you got a kick and a snare, and there's not a very clear pattern for Logic's tempo tracker to latch onto. And so it really did a bad job. I think it put the time signature in 3/4 most of the time, which this is not a 3/4 piece, and the tempo was kind of all over the place. So, and this piece in particular does ebb and flow quite a bit when it comes to the tempo. So I couldn't rely on Logic's built-in tempo mapping. So I had to kind of do that myself. And the first thing that I did for that was just kind of get a ballpark of where the tempo is approximately at the beginning. And for that, I just used a tempo tapper app on my phone. I think it's called Tap Tempo, the one that I used. So I just listened to it and tapped out the beat and got it kind of zeroed in on an approximate tempo for how it starts. And that turned out to be about 74. So from that point on, let me solo this track here. From that point on, I just kind of listen to it, and while I'm listening, I kind of conduct to the screen. I'll turn on the click for play, and then I conduct along with it. Because having this arm movement, it's like a kinesthetic thing where it's like an extra little input for your brain to help it zero in on where the tempo is going. So rather than just relying on my ears, where I might hear, okay, the tempo's off there, but is it going faster? Is it going slower? If I'm using my ears and combined with my hand, I think it helps triangulate that tempo a little bit better, a little bit easier. So just hit play here. See, it starts out very quiet right here. And I had the click on, and so I'm just kind of conducting along with it to see if I'm matching up close enough. And I don't need to be exact, I just need to be fairly close. And there's a slowdown here. Big slowdown right there. And you can see the other thing that I was doing there is also trying to catch differences in time signature. So like here, this might be different than what's in the actual sheet music score. There might not be a 3/4 and then a 5/4 here. All I need to do is kind of match what I think it sounds like. You may hear it and think something else, but that's what I was hearing. So again, it really doesn't matter as long as you get a tempo locked in that you can then follow as you record in all of your other instruments. And the other thing I was doing is just putting in these markers at this stage. So soft theme there. If I skip ahead a little bit, there's I called it the dark voices. And then there's big theme, and then intro flute. So there's some other instruments that come in earlier here, but this is where the flute comes in. Okay, and once I got the tempo in there, the next thing you have to figure out is where to start. Okay, so what instrument do you start on? And it kind of depends on what the instrumentation, what the arrangement is for the piece. My rule of thumb is to start either with a melody instrument or with an instrument that is playing a solid rhythm. A solid rhythmic phrase, like an ostinato, something like that. I'm not talking about percussion. You can start with percussion, but I think it's best to focus on either a melody instrument or a tonal rhythmic part. You want something that's going to help you lock on to both the tempo and the tonal center. That will help you play in each subsequent instrument. In this case, that was the flutes for me. So now I kind of broke the rule a little bit. I didn't actually start with the flutes. What I really started with was the cello and the contrabass, because they start out playing this low note that is just a drone that goes for quite a while. So you can hear there's the cello coming in. There's some percussion things that I added later. I did not add those at the start, but then flute. And that's the closest thing that this intro has to a melody instrument. At least it's the earliest thing that it has to a melody instrument. This do 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 little phrase that it plays back and forth, and then the oboe also plays along with it. So that's what it starts with. And that's what I started with as well. So I got the contrabasses and cellos playing their drone, and then they change notes a few times. And I'll just solo those out again. And then there's the flutes. And I am layering a few different flute patches and using different articulations. There's a staccato and a legato that I'm using, and I'll add in the oboes as well. There's the cello and contrabass. So starting out, this is all I had at first. And the contrabass and cello are switching with the change of the chord. Okay. So from there, I recorded all of those instruments right up until the end of the intro, right where there's the big swell and the main theme comes in. And then I just started adding in additional instruments from there, and kind of leapfrogging off of what the flutes are doing and what the contrabass is doing. I want to point out that I do have saxophone section in here. I have saxophone tracks. When I started working on this, I found a score on MuseScore. I found a Stargate Overture score that had a conductor score and all the instrument parts. And so I started out trying to use that. And I got going on it, and I saw, wait a minute, there's saxophones in here. Is this actually the orchestral score? And then I looked at it, well, it's got all the strings in there. But what I think it was is I think someone took did an arrangement that kind of combined the orchestral score and a concert wind band score and put them together. Because I didn't find any evidence that David Arnold used saxophones in his recording. I couldn't hear the saxophones when I tried to listen for them. But since they were in the score, I added them, and they're there in my version of it. But I didn't really care for the way that they sounded, and the saxophone samples that I have are not the best. I don't have a good saxophone library, what I consider a good saxophone library yet. So they're in there, but they're kind of mixed way down. But they're still in there, and so I added them as well. As I kept using the score, the intro section, the score kind of nailed it. It was right on with all of the parts. But then once it got into the big theme, it kind of started falling off. And by the time it's at the end with the crazy choir singing and all that, it was completely wrong. So I don't know what kind of arrangement it was supposed to be, but it started out really good. And then it just went to pieces.